Welcome to another episode of 4-Minute Film School. My name is Valentina V, and before anyone comments on it, yes, my voice sounds like a frog. It's okay, I'm sick. But regardless, today we're gonna have a great episode. We're talking about high-key interior lighting. Let's go. So I'm here with cinematographer Austin Sabado, who is a commercial DP, but he's also shot a lot of narrative films. And today we're talking about high-key interior narrative lighting. And I know that could be a little bit confusing. So first, what is high-key lighting?
High-key is really just less dramatic, less shadows, and less contrasty.
So why would you want to use high-key lighting in an interior narrative setting?
Well, high-key enables you to create an uplifting mood, a positive atmosphere in your scene.
Oh, that makes sense. You don't want everything to like sort of fall into shadow and be dark and broody. So when you're approaching a high-key lighting scenario, what are the things that you have to think about?
Well, you definitely want to pay attention to your details. Make sure you really examine the entire frame. I think as well as practicals, you want to pay attention to that, as well as think about what practicals you can add. And lastly, what's motivating your ambient fill in your interior? Is it the practicals? Is it the window? Is it something else?
All right, well, with that in mind, let's go look at some examples. So this first setup is an interior at night. So you're pretty much going with like warm tonal lighting. How did you approach this lighting?
So I looked at my entire frame, saw what was there, looked at the small details, saw that there were practicals, but they didn't have any bulbs in them. So I threw in 2 MWs, threw on some CTO, which actually are included with the MW package, which is awesome. And then we kind of expanded from there. So when you're using these LEDs, you can get very accurate exposure as well as great CRI.
So then how did you build on from there?
Right, so again, we're still looking at all the details. I noticed that on the corner right of the frame, there was kind of a black curtain and it was completely black. So I wanted to add in some texture. I kind of wanted to recreate like a lampshade. So we threw up a 120D with a light dome and then also threw in some CTO.
So I like that you put a light dome on there because that makes it softer and a little bit more high key. If you didn't have that sort of diffusion in front of it, it would have just been really harsh. So what's the next light you put on there?
The next light was a hair light. And the reason why we did that specifically because our character had dark hair and so it was blending too much with the black curtain. So having that hair light kind of created that separation. Next, we had our key and our fill. So our key was a 300D bouncing on a 4x4 bounce card, as well as our fill was a 120D also bouncing off a 4x4 bounce card.
So a few places in your image were sort of receding into shadow, and that's not a very high key situation if I do say so myself. So how did you adjust that?
We had a little light, another MW, and I had to place it right where the drawer is at because that drawer was just falling into the basically blackness. And so our little MW just kind of keyed that in.
I like how you're not afraid to take a light and place it. A lot of DPs are like, oh, okay, like this looks fine, or I don't have time, or I don't have the resources to do something. But literally, if you have a small light and you can add that little detail, why not? It's just gonna make your image so much better. So kudos, let's see how you built that. So for the second setup, you had the same location, the same actresses, the same locked off camera, but it's now daytime. So how do you approach lighting a daytime interior high-key situation?
Right, so we took away our practicals by removing the MWs as well as taking away our 120D with the light dome, that was our lampshade, and opened up the window, which created a nice ambient fill as well as a nice backlight for our characters.
If you just had the window, they would have been like totally silhouetted. So what else did you add back in there?
So we needed to compensate from the big window source that was backlighting our characters. We had a 300D bouncing off a 4x4 bounce card, as well as a 120D, using that as a fill, bouncing off a 4x4 bounce card.
Cool, let's take a look. So last but not least, you had this couch setup and you lit it a little bit differently than before, because before you focus on the background first or the practicals first, and this one you decided to go with the fill first. So what was that fill?
Right, so the fill was a big 8x8 muslin which we were bouncing a 300D off of that, and that just kind of created a nice ambient fill into the scene.
I like that because it's such a big soft source, it also lit up the background or the back wall, but there were no shadows from your talent onto the back wall. So how did you build upon that?
We had a 300D inside a China ball and kind of had that right overhead our talent, and the reason for that was to kind of eliminate some of the shadows, adding some more fill. We then added in our key, which was just a 120D bouncing off a 4x4 bounce card. And so that would key them in on the front side. And then our hair light, which was two 120Ds, both on each talent, just getting their hair. And then lastly, there was a practical on the right side of the frame, which we added in an MW.
So I like that practical is still playing in the frame, but you're not building your entire lighting setup around a practical. Let's take a look. So that is your episode on HighKey interior lighting. Austin, what are the things we have to consider before we set up a HighKey interior shot?
Well, when you have your entire frame up, your composition, you want to look at all the details. Small details are very important. Another thing is look for any practicals. Maybe you can add in a practical. And lastly, what's your motivation of your ambient fill? Is it the practicals? Is it the window light? Is it something else?
I really like your setups because they look like they can belong in like an actual movie or TV show, which actually leads me to my question for you. Is there a movie or TV show that you think uses this technique very successfully, and why? Leave your answer in the comments below.
And the best comment is going to win an Aputure MW.
It's our new underwater light. It's super bright. You'll love it. If you like this channel, if you like what we do here, subscribe, ring the notification bell, do all that. You can follow Austin on Instagram at
Austin Sabado.
Or you can follow me on Twitter at Valentina V. And until next time, guys, hope you enjoyed. Bye.